Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Marvin. When my wife commanded me to sleep in my car so her boyfriend could come over, she had no idea that she would end up regretting that decision for years. I'd been married to Tasha for 4 years when she told me to sleep in my car because her real boyfriend was coming over. And that humiliating night became the catalyst for the complete transformation of my life from broken and defeated to stable and self-sufficient. For years that had started as an obligation rather than love and had deteriorated into something toxic and painful before finally exploding in the most humiliating way possible. Tasha and I never should have gotten married. Our relationship hadn't been built on a foundation that sustains a long-term partnership. We'd met when I was 23 and she was 22, both living in Atlanta and running in the same social circles. We'd had a couple of casual flings over several months. Nothing serious, just physical attraction and convenience without a deeper emotional connection. Then Tasha got pregnant and told me one evening after we'd hooked up again. She said she was keeping the baby and that she didn't want to be a baby mama, that we needed to get married. I was 24 years old, unprepared for fatherhood, and terrified of the responsibility. But I've been raised with certain values about doing the right thing, about standing up and taking responsibility for your actions and their consequences. So I agreed to marry her. Not because I was in love, not because we had the kind of relationship that should lead to marriage, but because it felt like the right thing to do. I wanted my child to grow up in a 2-parent household and didn't want Tasha raising our baby alone. We got married quickly and quietly. A small ceremony at a courthouse, with just the immediate family present. Just legal paperwork that bound us together as we prepared for the baby's arrival. When our daughter was born, I loved her with every bit of me. I felt this overwhelming rush of protectiveness and determination to be a good father. The first year of marriage was calm and manageable. We were both focused on our daughter, on figuring out how to be parents, on adjusting to our new reality of sleepless nights and constant baby needs. Tasha and I weren't over-the-top romantic with each other. We coexisted reasonably well while caring for our daughter. Then financial issues hit. I was working in warehouse logistics, making decent but not great money. Tasha had stopped working to stay home with our daughter. We'd moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that was more than we could comfortably afford. But Tasha had insisted we needed it. Money got tight quickly. We couldn't afford everything Tasha wanted. Couldn't keep up with bills and still have money for extras. The financial strain created constant tension. Arguments started happening regularly. About money, primarily, but also about everything else. Chores and childcare responsibilities. Who was contributing more? Who was working harder? Small resentments that accumulated into bigger conflicts. Tasha would accuse me of not providing enough, of not being man enough to properly take care of my family, of failing as a husband and father because we couldn't afford the lifestyle she wanted. I defend myself by pointing out that I was working full-time, doing physical labor, and that we lived beyond our means. I suggested that she could get a part-time job to help with finances. She'd get angry at that suggestion. Say that I wanted her to work while also doing all the childcare and housework. That I was trying to burden her with everything while I did the minimum. The arguments were circular and exhausting. Never resolved anything. Just created more distance and resentment between us. As time went by through years 2 and 3 of our marriage, things deteriorated further. Tasha stopped trying to make our marriage work. She would be cold and detached whenever we interacted, showed no interest in fixing our problems or rebuilding any kind of connection. We existed as hostile roommates who happened to share a child. We would barely speak beyond necessary logistics. We slept in the same bed but never touched, lived separate lives under the same roof. I knew the marriage was failing, knew we weren't happy, but I stayed because of my daughter. I wanted her to have both parents present because I was terrified of what divorce would mean for my relationship with my daughter. One afternoon, during our 4th year together, Tasha handed me divorce papers. I came home from my shift to find her waiting with an envelope. She gave it to me without explanation or emotion and walked away. I stood there, reading the documents, feeling shocked and hurt, even though I shouldn't have been. We were clearly miserable. Divorce was the logical outcome of a marriage that had never been based on love. But seeing it formalized hit me harder than I'd expected. I asked Tasha if we could talk about it, and if there was any chance of working things out for our daughter's sake. She said no flatly, that she was done and had already filed. To her, this was happening whether I liked it or not. Within days of filing those papers, Tasha became openly disrespectful in ways she'd been more subtle about before. She would ignore me completely when I tried to speak to her. She would mock me in front of our child and treat me like an unwanted guest in the apartment I was paying for. I tried to maintain civility for our daughter's sake. I tried not to engage with Tasha's hostility. I just focused on being present for my daughter while waiting for the divorce to be processed. Everything changed after one night. I came home from work one evening tired and dirty from my shift. I walked into our apartment expecting the usual cold silence. Instead, Tasha was standing in the hallway, arms folded. She had this expression, part contempt and part something else I couldn't identify. She told me directly that I was sleeping in my car that night, that her real boyfriend was coming over, that I needed to leave. The words hit me like physical blows. Real boyfriend. Implying I'd been what, fake? A placeholder? Someone she'd settled for out of necessity? I felt humiliation burn through me, followed by anger. I didn't argue or immediately leave like she demanded. I just walked to the living room and sat down on the couch. When she repeated her warning, I told her I wasn't going anywhere, that this was my home, my name was on the lease, and if she had someone coming over, they could deal with me being present. Tasha got angry, started yelling about how I was being difficult, how I needed to respect her wishes, and how I was making everything more complicated than it needed to be. I stayed silent, sat on that couch, determined to wait. If there was really another man, I wanted to see him. Wanted proof that my wife had been cheating while we were still married. About 30 minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Tasha answered it. A man walked in. He was clearly comfortable being there, like this wasn't his first time at our apartment. When he saw me on the couch, his expression shifted from relaxed to uncertain, and he looked at Tasha for an explanation. She started telling him that I was just leaving, adding that I was being stubborn, but would go soon. I stood up, while feeling rage building inside of me that I had been trying to contain. This man had been sleeping with my wife, in the home I paid for, around my daughter. I walked toward him as he started talking tough, saying I needed to leave, that Tasha wanted me gone, that I should accept it and go. The anger in me overwhelmed everything else. I swung and connected with his face. He swung back and we fought right there in the living room, throwing punches, grappling, crashing into furniture. Tasha was screaming while my daughter started crying from her bedroom, woken up by the noise. The fight lasted maybe 2 minutes before Tasha called the police, told them there was a domestic disturbance and was attacking someone in their home. When officers arrived, Tasha painted me as the aggressor, said I'd come home angry and attacked her boyfriend unprovoked, that I'd been threatening and violent. Never mind that this was my home, with my name on the lease. The officers listened to her version, looked at me, disheveled from a fight, clearly angry, and made their decision. They told me I needed to leave for the night, that this was a domestic situation and someone had to go, that even though my name was on the lease, they were asking me to leave to prevent further violence. I tried to explain that Tasha had invited this man into my home, that I had every right to be there. They weren't interested in my explanation, just kept insisting I needed to leave and that I could deal with the situation legally later. But tonight I had to go. I looked at Tasha, who was standing there with a satisfied expression, like she'd won something. I looked at the boyfriend. He was holding ice to his face where I'd hit him, but smirking like he'd gotten what he wanted. I realized I had no choice. The police were going to remove me one way or another. I went to the bedroom and threw clothes into trash bags, grabbed some essentials, and walked out of my own home carrying trash bags like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I drove to a parking lot and sat in my car, feeling more humiliated and heartbroken than I'd ever felt. I slept in the back seat that night because I had nowhere else to go and no money for a hotel or Airbnb. The divorce that followed was brutal. Tasha fought for everything. She wanted maximum child support and wanted to ensure I had minimal time with my daughter. The custody battle was the worst part. I fought for shared custody, wanted a 50-50 time with my daughter, and wanted to remain an active, present father. Tasha manipulated the system expertly, emphasized that she'd been the primary caregiver since our daughter was born, that our daughter was young and needed stability with her mother, and I worked long hours and couldn't provide adequate care. The court sided with her on most issues. She was granted majority custody. I got limited visitation, every other weekend and one evening during the week. I was ordered to pay child support that took a significant chunk of my already modest income. Walking out of that courthouse after the custody decision was my emotional breaking point. I felt like I was being punished for trying to be a father and wanting to be present in my daughter's life. I'd married Tasha to do the right thing, had tried to make our family work despite never having real love between us, had worked hard to provide even when money was tight, and my reward was sleeping in my car, losing custody of my daughter, and paying support while barely scraping by myself. I started from scratch in every way. Worked hard to move into a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood, all I could afford with my warehouse salary after child support. I had to buy furniture from thrift stores and budget meticulously just to cover basics. The humiliation and the custody loss lit something in me. A determination to never be that powerless again and to never be in a position where someone could tell me to sleep in my car in my own home. I started working overtime whenever it was available, picked up weekend shifts, and took every extra hour the warehouse offered. Started looking for side jobs. Did moving gigs on weekends. I didn't have my child, so I did delivery driving in the evenings. Anything that would bring in extra income. I used that money to build skills. Took online courses in logistics management and supply chain optimization. Studied in the evenings after work. Worked towards certifications that would qualify me for better positions. I applied relentlessly for jobs with more responsibility and better pay and got rejected dozens of times, but kept applying, kept interviewing, and kept pushing. About 18 months after the divorce, I got promoted to a supervisor position at the warehouse. Better pay, regular hours, more stability. I used that stability to keep building, saved aggressively while taking courses, and positioned myself for the next opportunity. 2 years after the divorce, I got hired as a logistics coordinator at a larger company. This move came with a significant pay increase, better benefits, and a career trajectory rather than just a job. I moved into a better apartment in a safe neighborhood with good amenities nearby. While I kept advancing, I kept building skills and kept saving and investing. For years after the divorce, I'd become a logistics manager. Made 3 times what I'd made at the warehouse, had a comfortable home, had financial stability, and had rebuilt my sense of self-worth from the ground up. Most importantly, my relationship with my daughter was strong. She adored our time together. We'd built traditions and routines when she came around. She knew she was loved and valued. Her father would always be present for her, even when we couldn't be together all the time. I was no longer the man Tasha had thrown out. I wasn't the struggling warehouse worker who'd slept in his car, and I wasn't the defeated father who'd lost custody. I was someone who rebuilt my life entirely, who transformed humiliation into motivation, who created stability and success through years of relentless effort. Tasha noticed how well I was doing, saw it in the way I take care of our daughter, in the apartment I'd moved into, and in the fact that child support payments never missed despite being such a burden early on. She started reaching out, being friendly in ways she hadn't been since before our daughter was born. She would linger during the child exchanges to make small talk. She would text about things beyond logistics related to our daughter's schedule. She even suggested that we co-parent more closely, that we could have dinners together with our daughter sometimes, and that it would be good for our daughter to see her parents getting along. Then one day, she said it explicitly, suggested we start fresh, that we were older and more mature now, that we could try again as a family. Give our daughter what she deserves, both parents together. I looked at Tasha when she said this. Saw exactly what was happening. She was struggling financially, had been through multiple failed relationships, and had seen how I rebuild my life. And she wanted back in, wanted access to the stability I'd created, and wanted to benefit from the success I'd built through years of hard work after she'd thrown me out. I said no, simply and firmly, without anger or explanation. I told her I'd moved on, that we'd co-parent our daughter respectfully, but that there would never be anything beyond that between us, that I wasn't interested in revisiting our failed marriage. Tasha seemed shocked, like she genuinely expected me to jump at the chance to get back together, like she couldn't comprehend that I'd reject her. She became cold again. The friendly overtures stopped. The small talk during custody exchanges disappeared. Several months later, she filed a petition, dragging me back to court, and demanded increased child support. Argued that I was earning significantly more now than when support had been calculated initially. That our daughter deserved to benefit from my improved finances. The court date arrived. We both appeared with attorneys. Tasha's lawyer argued strongly that support should be substantially increased to reflect my higher income. My attorney countered with evidence of my expenses. The fact that I was saving for my daughter's future education, and that I provided well for her during my custody time, and that the existing support amount was already fair and sufficient. The judge reviewed everything carefully, asked questions about both our financial situations. The court then ruled that the existing child support amount would remain unchanged, that it was fair given my daughter's needs and both our incomes, that there was no basis for an increase. Tasha left the courthouse furious and bitter. She shot me a look of pure hatred as we walked out. I felt nothing but relief. She tried to use the court system to punish me for succeeding, to extract more money because she couldn't access my stability any other way. And she'd failed. The system had seen through it. Through mutual acquaintances and things my daughter occasionally mentioned, I pieced together Tasha's life since our divorce. She'd dated 3 different men seriously. All 3 relationships had been volatile, and some apparently abusive. She'd cycled through these relationships looking for stability and partnership, but kept choosing poorly. She was financially strained, living primarily on the child support I paid and working part-time jobs that didn't provide enough income, while struggling to maintain the lifestyle she wanted. The boyfriend who'd been there the night I slept in my car was long gone. He had left her after a few months. The subsequent relationships had followed similar patterns. She was alone, struggling, and apparently bitter that the man she'd thrown out had rebuilt so successfully while she'd stagnated. Looking back now, almost 9 years since that night Tasha told me to sleep in my car, I understand everything clearly. I learned that humiliation can be a catalyst if you let it motivate rather than destroy you. That night I slept in my car could have broken me permanently, but instead lit a fire that drove me to rebuild completely. I learned that the system often fails fathers in custody battles, but that doesn't mean you stop fighting to be present. Even with limited custody, I built a strong relationship with my daughter through consistency and genuine presence during our time together. I learned that people who've discarded you sometimes want back in when they see you've rebuilt your life. Tasha's suggestion about trying again wasn't about love or family. It was about her wanting access to the stability I'd created through hard work after she'd thrown me away. Most importantly, I learned that you don't need revenge when you've rebuilt yourself. The best outcome isn't making someone suffer, but making yourself better. My success was its own reward, regardless of whether Tasha noticed or cared. I'm grateful for the lessons that came from the worst period of my life, for learning who I could become when pushed to my absolute limit, for discovering the strength and determination I didn't know I possessed. Who I am now is someone I'm proud to be, someone who turned humiliation into motivation, who rebuilt from the absolute bottom, who succeeded despite everyone counting him out. That's worth everything, worth all the pain and struggle and difficult years.